Trevor Philips wasn't always like this. There was a time when he wasn't completely broken, when the chaos, the violence, all that insanity didn't define who he was yet. So what happened? How does someone get to that point, becoming one of the most unstable and dangerous characters in GTA 5? The truth is, it didn't start with Michael. It didn't start with the heists. It started long before that. And once you understand where it all began, everything about Trevor starts to make sense. Let's start from the very beginning. Sometime between 1966 and 1967, Trevor was born in Canada, near the border with the United States, and from a very early age, it was clear he wouldn't have a normal life. The place he grew up in was far from a real home. His mother lived a troubled life. His father struggled with alcohol, and both of them treated Trevor very poorly as a child. As time went on, things only got worse. Trevor was passed through dozens of foster homes, watching different father figures come and go, always revolving around his mother. He even had a brother named Ryan, but very little is actually known about what happened to him. Some of Trevor's own lines suggest his death may have been violent, possibly involving Trevor during a moment of rage, but nothing is ever clearly confirmed. And then, at some point during his childhood, everything falls apart. Trevor doesn't just get lost, he gets abandoned. His own father leaves him alone in a shopping mall and never comes back. And that moment changes everything. Because it's not just about growing up without a family. It's about being rejected by the one person who was supposed to protect you. And as Trevor himself mentions later, it's something he never forgot. And from that point on, his life takes a completely different path. With no structure, no direction. Trevor eventually joins the military. More specifically, the Air Force. And here's the interesting part. Despite everything he went through, Trevor showed an incredible natural talent for flying, something we clearly see during the game's missions. And most of this information doesn't come from theories or assumptions. It comes directly from Trevor himself. During a mission where he's heading back to Los Santos, he starts telling Wade parts of his past along the way. And in the middle of all that chaos, you begin to realize that the Trevor we see today didn't just come out of nowhere.
Right. But he could fly planes, this kid. So he signed up for the Air Force to fly all day long and bomb villages and maybe, just maybe, drop the nuke. And it was all going well until one day, just before he got his wings, an evil witch in charge of psychological evaluations told him he was unstable. Grounded him for life. That's terrible. It was. Sent him into a deep pit of doubt and despair.
Following that path, Trevor ends up joining the Air Force, and for a moment, it feels like his life might finally be heading in a different direction. But that doesn't last long. Because of his unstable temperament and his tendency toward violence, Trevor ultimately fails the psychological evaluation, and everything falls apart once again. But, to be fair, this isn't really a surprise. After everything he went through as a child, the signs had been there for a long time. Trevor had already shown aggressive behavior from an early age, including an incident where he physically attacked a hockey coach.
No, he shouldn't, because he's not a fucking sellout idiot.
Or hockey player.
He did for a while, but his coach accidentally had a stick jammed up his ass.
And, at this point, it becomes clear that the problem was never just his environment. It was something that had been building inside him for years. After that frustration, after failing to follow the one path that actually made sense to him, Trevor completely loses direction. With no purpose, no control, he starts living like a violent drifter. And that's when he begins getting involved in crime. At first, nothing too big. Small robberies, minor schemes, mostly around the border between Canada and the United States. But there's an interesting detail about this phase. During the Palito Bay heist, Trevor starts a conversation with the crew, encouraging everyone to share how their first robbery went. And when it's his turn, his story isn't exactly impressive. In fact, it's the opposite. Trevor admits he tried to rob a place where people actually knew him, and everything went wrong. He ended up getting arrested, but not for long. Because at that point in his life, Trevor wasn't thinking big yet. He was just doing what he knew how to do, 'cause chaos and survive. Up to this point, Trevor was just surviving. But that was about to change. Sometime in the late 80s to early 90s, Trevor starts running a small cargo transport operation, much of it illegal, across the border. Nothing too big, but enough to put him on the radar of the wrong people. And it's in this exact context that he meets someone who would completely change the course of his life. Michael. The two meet almost by chance, but what happens next already shows the kind of dynamic they would have. During their first encounter, a man confronts them over a car Michael had stolen. And before the situation can be resolved, Trevor reacts. Impulsively, violently, and completely out of proportion. He kills the man, using a flare gun, and in that moment, without even realizing it, Trevor ends up helping Michael. But more than that, they both realize something. They work well together, really well. From that point on, they start leveling up. Small crimes turn into bigger scores, and soon, they're pulling bank heists and increasingly larger jobs. But as expected, not everything goes according to plan. Early on, during one of their first major jobs, Trevor ends up getting arrested, but it doesn't last long, and when he gets out, they come back even stronger. For years, Trevor and Michael build an extremely profitable partnership until everything leads to one specific moment, the Ludendorff heist in 2004. But for this next big step, they were missing one piece: Brad. Brad was born in North Yankton and had already been living a life of crime long before crossing paths with the two of them. When they finally meet, the connection is immediate. He joins the duo, and from that point on, the three of them start pulling off bigger and bigger heists. This was no longer just about survival. It was something bigger, and over time, they become almost inseparable. But there's an important detail in this dynamic. Some interpretations suggest that Brad was actually closer to Trevor than he was to Michael, and that, little by little, starts to create tension, especially for Michael. Because to him, Brad was never someone he truly trusted. Both Michael and Lester, the mastermind behind their heists, saw Brad as a liability, impulsive, dead weight, someone who could ruin everything at any moment. But unlike them, Trevor saw something different. Brad was loyal, and for someone like Trevor, that meant more than anything else. While that tension was building, Michael's life was starting to change. At some point, he meets Amanda. They get involved, build a family, have children, and that completely changes how he sees everything. Michael becomes more cautious, more strategic, thinking not just about himself, but about the people who depend on him. But that change doesn't go unnoticed. Trevor starts to see it, and more than that, it starts to bother him. In his mind, Michael was changing, softening, drifting away from what got them there in the first place. And even if nothing had been said out loud, from that point on, their relationship was never the same. When the Ludendorff heist finally happens, Trevor has no idea what's really going on behind the scenes. Michael had already betrayed him, and Brad. In secret, Michael made a deal with Agent Dave Norton. The plan was simple and cruel. He would fake his own death during the heist. Dave would take the credit for the operation, and in return, Michael would get a new life, far away from everything, with his family in Los Santos. But that deal had one detail Trevor could never have imagined. His life was on the line, too. In Michael's eyes, Trevor was too unpredictable, a constant risk. So the real plan was to eliminate Trevor during the heist and let Brad take the fall. But nothing goes as planned. During the escape, Dave takes the shot, but the one who steps into the line of fire is Brad. Unlike Michael, he wasn't wearing a vest, and right there, he dies. Trevor witnesses everything in the middle of the chaos. Michael dies, Brad drops, and the gunfire doesn't stop. Without fully understanding what just happened, Trevor runs, and that's where one of the biggest lies in GTA 5 begins. For years, Trevor believes Michael is dead, and that Brad is in prison, and that destroys him from the inside, because despite everything, Trevor was loyal, to the point where, years later, he's still carrying that weight. Proof of that? He even tattoos a tribute to Michael, believing he lost the only partner he ever truly trusted. But the truth never disappeared. It was just buried. And when it starts to come back to the surface, that's when the story of GTA 5 truly begins. Years go by, and that doubt never leaves Trevor's mind. Michael dead, Brad in prison. That was the story he believed. But deep down, something didn't add up. Still, Trevor moved on the only way he knew how: chaos, violence, and survival. He settles in the Blaine County desert, running small criminal operations, gun trafficking, drugs, anything that keeps him in control. That's where Trevor Philips Enterprises is born. A small empire, but a brutal one. And by his side, someone completely different. Wade, naive, lost, but loyal to Trevor in an almost blind way. And then, everything changes. By chance or fate, Trevor sees something on TV, a robbery. Nothing unusual until he notices a detail, the style, the method. That couldn't be a coincidence. That was Michael. And in that moment, the truth starts to surface. Michael didn't die. He lied. From that point on, Trevor decides to head to Los Santos. And it's during that drive, alongside Wade, that he starts talking about the past, about Michael, about what happened in Ludendorff. And the more he talks, the clearer it becomes that he never got over it. Because Trevor doesn't forget. He never forgets.
Oh, little Trevor made a new friend called Brad, and he was thinking about cutting Mike off when it all went to shit, and Mike got killed and Brad went to jail.
Arriving in Los Santos, Trevor wastes no time. He goes straight to Michael's house to confront him. After all, while Trevor spent years believing his friend was dead, mourning, carrying that weight on his shoulders, Michael was there, alive, with a new identity, living in luxury, with his family. The reunion between them is extremely tense. Michael is visibly shaken. Surprise, fear, and unease, mainly because, in his mind, Trevor wasn't supposed to be there. He believed Trevor had been dead for years, or at the very least, lost somewhere, drowning in drugs, without direction. But no, he was alive, and now, standing right in front of him. Trevor, on the other hand, doesn't come looking for answers. He comes to confront. Every word, every look carries years of built-up anger. But, unexpectedly, the two end up working together again, largely due to pressure from Agent Dave Norton and his superiors. Michael is forced back into the game, and Trevor joins him. And for a moment, Trevor believes everything is back to normal, that they are, once again, that same duo from before. Heists, chaos, planning, as if nothing had ever happened. And in his mind, there's only one thing missing to make it complete: getting Brad out of prison. Because to Trevor, that was still the reality. Michael died. Brad was arrested. And now, finally, they could fix it. But what Trevor didn't know is that all of this was just another lie. The letters he had been receiving from Brad, from prison, weren't from Brad at all. They were from Dave. It was all part of a plan, a way to monitor Trevor and keep him under control. And the most dangerous part? Trevor didn't suspect a thing, at least not at first, because shortly before the big score, the Union Depository heist, the gold bars job, he even tells Lester he's going to need his help, and Michael's, to break Brad out of prison. And this is exactly where the story truly starts to crack, because the truth is much closer than he thinks.
Got another job I want your help with after this. I ain't even talked to Mike about it yet, but he's gonna be on board. He's obligated.
What is it?
Ain't it obvious? Bustin' Brad out of the clink.
Trevor starts to realize something is wrong. Every time Brad comes up, Michael dodges it, changes the subject, avoids answering, acts strange, and that doesn't go unnoticed. At the same time, Trevor feels something else. Michael isn't the same anymore. That life of crime doesn't seem to make sense to him anymore. Family, comfort, stability, everything Trevor never had. And deep down, Trevor realizes Michael is ready to walk away from that life for good, and maybe leave him behind again. With all of that in his head, suspicion turns into certainty. Trevor decides to go after the truth. He goes back to North Yankton, to Michael's grave, the place that was supposed to close this story, but was actually hiding everything. And when he starts digging, he gets his answer. It's not an empty coffin. It's Brad. In that moment, there's no more doubt. Trevor was betrayed, again, by someone he saw as a brother. And this time, there's no ignoring it. His anger reaches another level. It's not just suspicion anymore. It's certainty. It's personal. And that explodes shortly after. During a deal that goes wrong, Michael ends up being kidnapped by the triads. Franklin even tries to convince Trevor to help, but this time, Trevor doesn't move. To him, it wasn't his problem anymore. It was consequence, the consequence of Michael's choices. And for a moment, Trevor simply lets it happen. He lets Michael be taken, without interfering, without trying to stop it. But in the end, even with all the anger, all the betrayal, that doesn't close the story between them. Because some bonds don't break that easily. In the end, even after everything, Trevor still helps Michael. Not out of friendship, not out of forgiveness, but because, in his mind, he's the only one who has the right to torment Michael. He's the only one who gets to take revenge. Anyone else, any external force, doesn't have that right. And there's another important factor in all of this. Trevor has always hated authority. Police, government, agents. To him, they're all enemies. So when Michael starts getting deeper and deeper involved with the FIB, that matters. Because no matter the betrayal between them, Trevor would never accept seeing Michael being controlled by the feds. And that's where a key piece in this dynamic comes in: Franklin. Franklin met Michael first. He became almost like a protege, someone who saw in him a chance to grow, to escape the small life he was living. But at the same time, he also builds a relationship with Trevor. Even without fully understanding what happened in North Yankton, even while watching the two constantly clash, Franklin becomes the balance between them, the bridge, the only one capable of moving between both sides without breaking. And that makes all the difference in the end, because at the most critical moment in the story, it's Franklin who decides. In the canonical ending, option C, he chooses not to sacrifice either of them. He chooses to save them both. And in a way, that choice also holds Trevor together, because after everything he's learned, all the lies, all the reasons to completely lose control, Trevor is still there, unstable, unpredictable, but still present. And a big part of that is because of Franklin. And in the end, Trevor is someone completely broken, full of scars, resentment, and anger, always searching for answers in the middle of his own insanity. Because deep down, it's not just madness, it's emptiness. The love he never had growing up, especially from his mother, he tries to replace it in other ways. And that becomes very clear with Patricia Madrazo. For a while, she's good for him. We see a different Trevor, calmer, more controlled, even more human. He opens up, he changes. Even the environment around him changes. But it doesn't last, because deep wounds don't just disappear. And what Trevor wanted most, in the end, was something simple: loyalty. He wanted Michael to be loyal to him the same way he was, but that never happened. And that's exactly where everything falls apart. Because Trevor may be violent, unpredictable, chaotic, but he was never fake. In the end, Trevor isn't insane for no reason. He's the result of everything that went wrong and everything he could never fix.